So, what do we do about American education? The debate has gone on for a very long time, and yet we fall further and further behind. We need a quick, basic fix. We need to rewire our children's brains so they become efficient learners, even among the most adverse circumstances. But what about all those computer brain training programs out there on the internet? According to the NIH initially funded studies, there's no translation between the games and real-life learning. Well, then there's music and chess and martial arts. And what about tennis? Don't they rewire the brains? Yes, they do, but they're long-term. They require teacher expertise, materials cost, a long learning curve, sometimes special venues, and sometimes too much time out of the student's day. Well, what would make acting training the best possible interface? Consider for just a moment what is required of actors. They're given a text of varying degrees of difficulty, and they have to comprehend, retain, absorb, and regardless of the final medium in stage or film, they have to create roles and whole universes, whole worlds in time and space. Ideally, isn't that what we want from students? We give them material to learn, be it on a computer screen or a whiteboard or the page of a textbook, remember those? And we ask that they comprehend, retain, absorb, and then use what they've learned to create and negotiate the rest of their lives. Okay, so the process is the same, but what do actors do? Well, the late great actor Peter O'Toole put it very succinctly when he said, "I look at the ink." He didn't say the words, and that's important. He said, "I look at the ink." He knew that when he looked at the ink, his mind would grab the words, but his body would relax, would open up and absorb. Then he said, "Doesn't go here, it goes here." It doesn't go here in the prefrontal lobes. That's what science calls your free won't. It stops everything. It goes to the corpus callosum, the great integrator of the human brain. And then it goes back into the unconscious, and then down to the breathing muscle, the main diaphragm muscle here, and it swirls around, and out it comes, thought, emotion, and action. Well, if you're a great actor like Peter O'Toole was, that probably all comes instinctively. But for the majority of actors, what they have to do is go through instrument training. And that involves training the voice, the mind, and the body so that they connect into the acting state. That is, a highly concentrated mind connected to a very relaxed body, a neurological system that is so relaxed it becomes a superconductor. Okay, what are the steps? There are 7 basic ones. They are relaxation, concentration, observation, mind-body connection, building imagination, rhythm, and empathy. Now, there are many, many exercises for all of these areas within the classic works themselves, particularly Stanislavski's second book, Building a Character, also Michael Chekhov's, that's Michael, not Anton Chekhov's, book To the Actor, particularly his first chapter, The Actor's Body and Psychology. And finally, there's a charming still assigned text by Richard Boleslavsky, Acting, the First 6 Lessons. Now, within these classic works, there is one exercise that really encompasses the first 3 areas, quite wonderful. It encompasses relaxation, concentration, and observation. 3 actors are chosen. One picks a very, very simple, everyday, without thinking task. It might be, making lunch, gathering together the backpack, getting ready to leave your apartment or your home. What do you have to do? Breaks it down into very small sequential movements always, and then we'll do it as a mime without words, all of those steps. The second observes and tries to repeat all those actions. The third catches the omissions and mistakes of the second. Now, at first, actors find this really difficult, until they learn one thing. The first thing they have to do is relax. And as they relax, the muscles relax, and that brings in the concentration, allowing them to sustain the concentration. The exercise can be done every day with varying tasks, and with age and with mastery, it can grow and grow and grow in complexity, really build a mind. Okay? What about rhythm? What's the importance of rhythm? To an actor, basically it's how they create character, how a scene flows. They start with a text, again. And the text is written, and they have to make it speech. But they're different processes. Written language is for the mind and the eye. It doesn't translate physically. So what happens? Well, there is a way to get into that text, to physicalize it. Because there is an intrinsic rhythm to prose, just as there is to music and poetry. Crack that rhythmic code, and you're in. What is it? How do you do it? It's already there, been there. There's a system of rhythmic notation from the International Phonetic Alphabet, which was created in the late 1800s over in Europe. Basically involves throwing out punctuation and marking any text for breaths and stresses. Eventually, you don't have to mark. The mind sees and makes an automatic translation. When you read rhythmically, when you read on the breath, you encode the material through the action of the up and down of the spinal column, which encodes rhythmically music and poetry in the brain. So when you do it with prose, you comprehend and retain easily and for a long time, just as you do with a song or a poem. Finally, what about empathy? Long before neuroscience ever discovered the existence of mirror neurons in the 1990s, actors were doing the mirror exercise. What do? You take two actors, they face each other. One is the instigator, one is the mirror. Now, the one that's doing the action, the instigator, will choose an emotion, a feeling, whatever, and carve out that feeling through movements in space. It can be anything, very, very simple. It could be what they're feeling. This is it. And then they get more and more complex. The mirror, of course, must be a mirror and replicate, synchronize with the actions absolutely perfectly. And when that mirror does, that mirror is feeling what the actor is feeling because they're replicating the neurological flow. They have to feel it. They have developed empathy. The ramifications of this exercise for a classroom are enormous, okay? Consider the problem of bullying, the terrible problem of bullying, which has always existed and always will, as long as you have human nature. But now with the computer being a buffer, being a barrier to that bully feeling what that poor bullied person is feeling, we've got to get past it somehow. In the classroom, beginning young, right up through high school, you can take them one-to-one, or you can take the child that's being bullied or the weaker child in the classroom, and you can put them in the classroom and have that child just draw it. It's easier than words. Just draw it what they're feeling. If they're feeling put upon, if they're feeling just defensive, whatever they're feeling. Have the class do it. And if they do it, if they synchronize, they will feel, they will begin to develop empathy. They will feel for that student. Now, there's another way to turn this around too. Not only do you make the would-be bullies sympathetic, empathetic, but also you can strengthen the internal core of the child who is the mark, the target. And that is by teaching them to do an antithetical response. All you have to do is whatever is coming at them, all they have to do is learn if something is battering them, those slings and arrows, and they're coming at them. There are ways to immediately negate that. And that is it coming out like this, all you have to do is get the child to go like this. Or you have to get the child, even better, when now that's coming at them, to go. And they'll feel it, and they'll let it go. Or simply to toss it back. You build strong characters. Now, not only with bullied children and people who would be bullies, but also identifying early on the potentially troubled student that might take the gun later on and shoot up the classroom. identifying anger, identifying those energies, and using the same principle to have the child they won't even probably know what they're doing when they're very young, and that is just copy my movements. And every time they have that anger, they have whatever it is, do an antithetical movement. You won't mitigate it. You won't fix everything, but it should go a long way to controlling the program and the problem. If the acting face exercises are done consistently and correctly, and they're done every day as a warm-up exercise, the time lapse to measurable student improvement is weeks. The cost, negligible. That's our quick fix.